Hello and welcome to this video workshop where I'm going to show you how to sell your cafe without going it alone and without having to pay out thousands in commission. Now, whether you're currently on the market or just thinking about selling, then this is the place to be. The place to fully understand the sales process and how you can sell for the most money and in the shortest time. So I'm Paul Leach and I've been buying, running and selling cafes for virtually all of my working life, which is well over 25 years now. During that time, I've owned and operated and sold 9 of my own food businesses, which included things like cafes, bakeries, pie shops, a sandwich shop, and I now use all the experience I gained over that time to help people like yourself to get the best result possible when selling. So this is the first in a series of 4 training videos where I'm going to be teaching you the following things.
We're going to look at how to fully prepare yourself and the business for sale so that you go onto the market and you're ready to deal with inquiries straight away. You're also going to know exactly what to expect from the sale process. We're going to talk about how to value your business properly so that you don't walk away with less than you deserve or sit on the market for ages waiting for a buyer because you've gone on overpriced and then you have to drop the price. We're going to talk about how to get your business in front of the right people without spending a fortune on advertising. We're then going to look at how to get rid of the time wasters and the tire kickers early on so that you're just dealing with the serious buyers quickly and efficiently without it taking up too much of your time. We're also going to talk about how to negotiate the deal so you get the best price possible without the need to consider low offers from those time wasters and those tire kickers. And then finally, we're going to talk about how to keep the deal moving so it doesn't lose momentum and fall over in the final stages. So really the main goal of these videos for you is to show you how to sell your cafe for the highest price and in the shortest time possible.
So how do you sell your cafe for the right price and at the right time? Well, the goal of this workshop is to show you the critical things you need to know to plan your sale, prepare properly, and then get your business sold. If that sounds like it's going to be of interest to you, then let's jump in and get started.
Okay, let's talk about the 3 stages of the sale. So as we go through the sale process, naturally the ultimate goal, the ultimate aim is to make sure that we get you a good sale. So a sale price that you're happy with. So what we're looking for is to make sure that you're selling for the right price and that you're selling at the right time. And time, when we talk about that, we're talking about the right time for you and the right time for the business and the right time for the market. So we'll go into that in more detail as we move through the videos, but those are the two things that are really going to help you to get a better sale, and in turn it's going to help the sale to move quicker, which is going to hopefully keep the business sale more confidential for you. And most people that we talk to, that's a big concern of making sure that not too many people find out. You know, we're only really putting it in front of potential buyers. It's not the staff finding out or the suppliers finding out and that kind of thing. So making sure that you're positioned at the right price, going onto the market at the right time is going to help you to get that sale and keep it more confidential. So those are the focuses, and that's really the main emphasis of the message behind these videos and this workshop, is that really the more planning and preparation you put in, and it's not a great deal of work, but by doing it, you're going to stand the best chance of selling for the right price, the right time, and move that sale nice and quickly. So the 3 areas or the 3 stages of the sale that we're going to focus on as we move through these videos are, first off, we're going to talk about planning. Now the planning stage, really when we look at that, there's 3 different areas that we're going to focus on in the planning stage, and as we go through further on in this video we'll talk in more detail about these, but I'll just touch on them quickly now as to what they are. So firstly, we're going to look at the personal plan. So, you know, what are you looking to do when you move on? And in order to do that, what do you need to net from the sale? So like any good plan, you start with the end in mind and work backwards from there. So we want to work out where are you going? What do you need to do? You know, even have some time off and then get into something else. How much money do you need to net from the sale in order to do that? And we can work back from there as to, you know, working towards a plan to get you exactly what you need for the sale. We're also going to talk about the legal side, and this is an area that we'll touch on in more detail because this is something that can make a big difference to not only the value of the business but also the saleability and the speed in which the sale progresses. So we'll look through that in more detail later on in this video. We're also going to talk about the financial side. So the financial side of things, where we're double checking that there's not going to be any nasty surprises at the end, that there's no liabilities you're unaware of, and that you know exactly what, when you get your sale proceeds, what's going to be paid out of that and what you're going to be left with. And that those three things all tie in together. So you're making sure on the financial side that you end up with enough to do whatever your personal plans and personal goals are, with the next stage of your career, of your life. Well, once we've gone through the planning stage, we're going to then talk about preparation. So the preparation stage is probably the stage that I think has the most influence and impact on the whole process. So, if you get this stage right, it really does make a very big difference into how the sale progresses and how, how stressful, I guess, and how much of your time it takes up. So during this stage, we're going to focus on the documents that buyers are likely to need. We'll go through a process of looking at all the type of things that people like to ask for and are likely to need. And that does vary from buyer to buyer. So we try and cover all the bases to make sure that you've got all of that prepared, and there's no, scrabbling around at the last minute and slowing the sale down looking for documents. So we'll give you a good overview of all the type of things that people are likely to ask for, and it will show you a way that you can make that very easy to distribute that information as it's requested. We're also going to talk about one of the most important parts of the whole process, again, the valuation side. So we're going to look at how to appraise the business, how to work out where the value sits so that, you're going onto the market on the right price. You're not underselling and doing yourself out of, 10, 20, 30,000. And also you're not overpricing and, getting to the point where you're sat on the market not getting any inquiries. The other part of the preparation stage that we will talk about is marketing. So we're going to show you how to put together a profile and a marketing plan to make sure that you're getting the business in front of the right people. And we use that marketing as well to help qualify people. So it's not just about passing on information, it's making sure that the people that have inquired are actually interested in your business, and your business is going to be a good fit for them. But once we've taken care of those two stages, and really only then, we'll move on to the selling stage. So a lot of people, when they're selling on their own, this is a downfall where people will just put the business up on the market and kind of hope for the best, and that old we'll just test the market. Well, that is a flawed process that doesn't work in the current market, and it's so easy for people to get information about things now with the internet and Google. You can't work like that anymore. It just doesn't work. There's no point trying to test the market. You've got to get everything planned and prepared properly before you go to market. Otherwise you're blending in with a lot of other people. And the idea here is that we're standing out from the crowd and presenting the business differently to how most people are presenting it, to give you the edge when selling. There's a lot of competition out there at the moment, so if you're doing the same as everyone else, you can expect the same results. So this is a different approach. It's front loaded with a bit of work at the beginning, but ultimately it's going to help you to get a better result in less time, and will make the whole process a lot less stressful for you. So during the selling stage, we're going to look at advertising. We'll show you how to write advertising copy, and make sure that you're giving enough information but not too much. So basically putting it out there to people and getting inquiries, but not giving them all the information so that they have to contact you for more, and you can then start and engage with them, and hopefully at that point try and get them to come and have a look at the place and then start trying to sell to them. So the other thing we do once we've started advertising and generating interest is we want to talk about how to qualify those leads. So the inquiries that are coming through, we want to make sure before we start pushing to get them to come and have a look at the place and start trying to see if we can sell the business to them, we want to make sure they're a genuine buyer, that they're qualified to buy. So we'll look at how to get rid of the time wasters and tire kickers early on, and then from there, how to progress the sale. We're also going to talk then about when that does progress. We're going to talk about negotiation. So this stage really about how to stay strong and unemotional throughout the process, and to make sure that you are, progressing the sale without without the buyer being able to take advantage of you. So we'll talk about some of the ways in which we do that. And as I said, with all of these stages, the 3 stages, we're going to go into more detail into all of those areas. Kicking off initially, obviously, as I mentioned in this video, with the planning stage. So let's talk now, let's jump straight in and have a look at the planning stage, and we'll go into more detail about the personal, legal and financial plans. But hopefully that's giving you an idea of what's coming up and what we're going to cover off in the next 3 or 4 videos. So with that said, let's jump in and have a look at the planning stage. So the planning stage, the first stage that we're going to talk about, really involves, as we discussed previously, 3 different areas. So personal planning, legal planning and financial planning. So on the personal side, you want to be thinking ideally about, what are you going to be doing next? What's your next step? What's your plan? So hopefully after the sale, you're going to have a budget to take a little bit of time off and have a bit of a breather in between this and whatever it is you're planning to do next. But with what you are looking to do next, you want to make sure that you have a figure in mind of what you need to net from the sale in order to give you the ability to move on to that next stage comfortably, without stress and without worrying. One of the things I noticed when selling is that if you don't have a clear plan, it's very easy to live off that capital for a while. And trust me, when you lose your income and you lose the ability to sort of bring food and milk and things home, that capital can go down fairly quickly. So a really good idea at this stage to give some thought about, not only what you're going to do, and it doesn't have to be decided and set in stone, but give it some serious thought about what you're going to do, and in order to do that, how much do you need to net from the sale. From there, you can start working backwards and thinking, okay, well, if we need X, we need to sell for Y in order to cover off and pay the outstanding liabilities. We'll talk about in the financial side of things. So make sure you're giving some serious thought into your next steps and your plans for whatever it is you're looking to do, just so that you're not in a position that I've been in before, where it actually took me longer than I sort of anticipated to go from one business into the next. And because of that, as I said, I ate into a lot of capital that, whilst you can always earn that back, I guess it's just one of the things I picked up from one of my first few sales, is that it works a lot better if you know, or at least have a good idea of what you're going to do after you move on. So make sure you give that some thought. So ideally, the first thing really we want to talk about is what this stage, the ideal outcome for this stage. And these points cover both of the first 2 stages, so the planning and the preparation stage. And the desired outcome for completing those stages properly really is to make sure that you're selling at the right time and for the right price. When we talk about time, there's 2 different things we're looking at there. So is it the right time for you? So with what we've just mentioned there with your personal plans and in time-wise for the market, and where the business is in regards to being prepared for sale, is it the right time to be putting it on the market? Are you going to get the sale? Are you going to get the price? Are you going to get what you net and what you need to net from the sale in order to move on with that next step and that next plan? So really important that these two stages, they are completed in an order for a reason. A bit like anything, a bit like making a coffee or baking a cake, there's a standard sort of procedure, recipe if you like, that you go through with the preparation and with the planning stage and then with the sale in order to try and get the best result possible. So that's the desired outcome we're looking for. Make sure you're going to get the right price and that it sells in the right time and that you're going to the market at the right time. So with these steps, with the planning and the preparation stage, if you get it wrong, it's going to be harder for you to generate buyer inquiries. So in the preparation stage, when we talk about valuation, at the moment it's a tough market. If you go to the market overpriced, you're just not going to get inquiries at all. So we want to try and prevent that and make sure that when you do go to market, you're generating serious interest fairly quickly. So that stands to reason that if you're going on the wrong, without preparation, without planning, you're going to spend more time on the market. So again, going back to being overpriced, you're not going to get a movement early on, and if you're not prepared, then it's going to come back to bite you later on. So when that happens, you tend to find that this is the instance where you see businesses and the price drops. It'll drop $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 from when you've seen it listed previously. So as I said, it's a flawed process testing the market. It's a far better and far more considered approach to go to the market at the right price at the right time and make sure that when you do generate inquiries, you can progress them quickly. That comes back to this point here where, if you're not prepared properly to deal with inquiries as they come in, you stand the chance of losing that buyer partway through the deal, and that's really frustrating. So maybe you've even got to the point of offer, but if you're not prepared properly, and buyers are pretty fickle at the moment, they're typically looking at several different businesses. So if you're not in a position to move that and keep that momentum going throughout the sale, you do stand a chance of losing that buyer partway through. And that, of course, then is going to end up in you netting less than you need or expect on the sale price. So expectation's an interesting thing, and I think as you go through this process thoroughly, your expectation of where the value sits in the current market and for your business as it is at the moment is going to be much clearer and much straighter than it would be by just, as I said, testing the market or putting the business up there and hoping for the best. So we want to make sure you get exactly what it is that you're after and get the best result possible. So you don't want to be in a position, with the fourth point there where you stand a chance of it falling over, and then the only way from there with the price is down. That's when you do see people dropping the price when they've had somebody come in and they've maybe lost one or two buyers and they're getting frustrated with the whole process. So we want to try and do as much as we can to prevent all of that from happening and make sure that you're in a position to move the sale nice and quick. So when you do get it right, you do avoid any nasty surprises because you've been through all of the process of considering all the options and working everything out properly. We're going to help to make sure that you really maximize the value of your business. And going through that planning and preparation stage, if the business value isn't where you want it at the moment, then there's opportunities and ways that we can look at in order to help you maximize the value and push the price up so that it meets the market expectation, but also is going to get closer to what it is that you're looking for. Coming back to that point again, so by doing those things thoroughly, you are going to get the best price that you possibly can, and having everything prepared and ready to move through the process will cut down the amount of time that you spend on the market. So by doing that and having everything prepared and ready to go, it does make it a lot less stressful for you. So a lot of the people that we talk to, they seem to think that the sale process is a very time-consuming and stressful affair. And like with anything, I guess, if you don't go into it with your eyes open and doing it, get it all set up properly, then it can be. But it's really up to you what you make of it. So this process is all geared around making sure that you stand the best chance of moving the sale through quickly. So when we look at the planning stage, one of the first things that we suggest to our brokerage clients and our 6 steps to sale clients is that you take some legal advice. So with the legal side of things, if there are things there that need fixing up or need adjustment, need changing, these are typically the things, once solicitors get involved, that can take more time. So by jumping in and looking at these points first, if there's things that you need to do, you know that you can get that done in a timely manner, and it's not something that you're having to deal with further down the track where it could potentially stall or even cause the deal to fall over. So with that, really, when you organise an appointment with your solicitor or dig out your lease, the lease is by far the most important document when it comes to the sale process. It's one of the biggest drivers of the value of the business. So with the profit and the lease, those are the two things that can really affect the value of the business more than anything. So on this side of things, you want to make sure that you understand how much time is remaining on the lease. So that's with the existing term and with the options, how much time is there? And is that a reasonable amount of time in relation to what your expectation is on the price of the business? Does it give the buyer enough time to get a good return on the money that they're spending? So make sure that you know exactly what that time is, and getting to know the ins and outs of the lease is really important for dealing with inquiries thoroughly as well. So that would be one of the first considerations to look at. You also want to make sure that you're over the rent increases. So how often are they? Typically they're annual, and how much? So are they CPI? Are they CPI plus a percentage, a fixed percentage? What happens at the end of the term or in between the term and the option being exercised? Is it a market review? So this is something that you want to be putting in the front end advertising and marketing. It's a question that most serious buyers at least will be asking or looking for the details on early on. So make sure that you understand what they are, and this will also affect the price of the business as well. So important that you understand what that is. So it's a really good opportunity. Dig that lease out. If you're anything like me, like once you've done the deal and you've got into a place, you know, the lease just just got tucked away, and you didn't really look at it unless there was a problem. So it's going to be something that, as I said, serious buyers, and this is how we know how some serious some buyers are actually, because really the lease, if they're asking about the lease early on, you know that they're serious, because without a good lease and without a solid opportunity to get the return on investment, it doesn't really matter about anything else. Because if the lease is no good, it doesn't matter what the fit out's like, it doesn't matter what the profit is. Without a good lease, the business is flawed, and the value is flawed. So make sure that you're going through that, as I said, because if we need to start dealing with your solicitor to get changes made to deal with the landlord and maybe extend the term or negotiate a different lease, it can take time. So really good to get your head around this in the very early stages. You also want to look at the assignment clause. So the assignment clause basically is where it's describing what the process looks like in relation to the landlord approving the buyer, i.e. the person that's looking at buying your business, and taking you off the lease and assigning the lease to them. So this part of the deal, when we put forward, and we'll go into this in more detail as we move through the negotiation stage, but this really is all about making sure that you're presenting to the landlord a solid buyer. Like, it's no good you getting a deal agreed with a buyer only find out that when it gets to the landlord that they knock them back. At that point, it doesn't necessarily mean the deal's over, but it's certainly going to mean a lot more time and effort involved from yourself in order to try and get that deal through. So have a look at the assignment clause and understand what the wording is around that. And if you're not sure, feel free to talk to your solicitor about that and double check it. In most cases, it's going to say that the landlord can't legally refuse the application of a new buyer if they have equivalent or greater experience and equivalent or greater financial standing than the current tenant, i.e. yourself. So what you're looking for here is to make sure that your buyer, when they come through, and part of the qualification process that we'll talk about later, is making sure that that buyer does actually have relevant experience, does have enough money and enough funds, enough security in order to satisfy what your particular landlord's going to be looking for. And you'll probably remember from on the way in, when you bought the business or when you took the business over, when you signed a lease, you'll probably understand the process and remember the process that either the agent or the landlord went through in relation to qualifying you. So give some thought back to that process, have a look at that assignment clause, and start planning in the back of your mind how you're going to present the buyer. And we'll give you some help with that later on in this video series, but how you're going to present that buyer and make sure that you stand the best chance of, when you've got that deal agreed, of your landlord approving the assignment of the lease. Again, with most things, it's just a process. It's something that even if you have a buyer that doesn't have experience, it doesn't matter. We've just sold, in fact, in the last month, we've sold 3 big businesses to people coming out of corporate with no previous hospitality experience. So there are ways around that, and there are things that we'll talk about later in the series that we can help you with on that as well. Also, you want to ask the question about how much your solicitor's going to charge you for this process. So we, we typically see the prices vary radically for what's effectively a similar process. And whilst it's very difficult to know early on exactly what it's going to cost, time-wise, how much time is going to be involved in the negotiation, you should be able to get a rough idea from your solicitor early on about what they're going to charge you for this process. So get a quote, and don't be afraid to ask a couple of other people as well, a couple of other solicitors, because this is, to a degree, a relatively standard process. So you want to find somebody, if you haven't got a solicitor or you're looking for a second opinion, you want to find somebody that's got good commercial experience and has done this sort of thing, and maybe someone that specialises in this type of transaction. But get an idea of what their costs are likely to be. So usually there's a standard cost, and then there might be an extra charge for any additional hours or time spent on the deal. But where I'm coming from here is, if your solicitor that you've dealt with is, charging you, say, $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000 as a quote for this, and you can find another good commercial solicitor that might do it for, say, $2,000. Providing you're comfortable with that lower quote and with the person offering that quote, then they don't need to have any background with you. They don't need to have any understanding of the business or anything else in order to transact on this part of the sale for you. So do get an idea of that, because these costs, they can spiral out of control if you're not careful. Typically, just as a ballpark figure, we'd probably be looking anywhere between sort of $2,500 and $3,500. I would suggest at this point is a fairly reasonable amount of money for this kind of deal. There is a bit of work involved, and it will depend on how involved your solicitor gets with the assignment side of things. But typically, $2,500 to $3,000 should be a reasonable amount. Okay, so once you've got the legal side taken care of, we want to start moving on to the financial side of things. So with the bookkeeper, it's a good idea with all of your, all the people you work with, bookkeeper, accountant, solicitor, it's a good idea to put them in the picture at this point about the sale and about your plans and your intentions, so that they can work with you to help you get the best deal that you possibly can. With the bookkeeper, you want to be making sure that you've got everything up to date and everything's accurate, and that it stays that way, so that as you're dealing with buyer inquiries, you've got information to hand quickly. You can get details back to them nice and quick, and you're not keeping people waiting for anything. So with that, once that data is all up to date and accurate, you get your bookkeeper to run you the following reports. So you want a P&L for the current year, so how the business is tracking currently. A P&L for the current year versus last year, providing that's the proviso there is that hopefully you're showing an upward trend. If it's not as good as last year, then I would just provide the P&L without the comparison. Also, you want to be showing a report for creditors and debtors, so you show exactly where the business is at. And this really is for your purpose, so that you can see exactly, if you sold the business today for the price that you're hoping for, what would you have to pay out, what's left to pay, and what would you net. So those are the most important reports there from the bookkeeper. Also a balance sheet report is going to be a useful thing to have a look at to show you the overall position of the business. So when your bookkeeper's got everything up to date, or if you're doing that yourself, once you know that everything's accurate and you've got those reports, before you talk to the accountant, it's a good idea to really get your head around those numbers and understand where it's at completely. No one really understands the business as well as you, and it's really crucial. If you don't know your numbers, you obviously should know your numbers, but you really need to know the numbers for the sale process as well. So take some time to go through that before you sit down with the accountant. Just so that you're speaking from a place of complete knowledge about where your business is at currently, and you can then balance that with the advice you get from your accountant. So with the accountant, ideally what you want to be looking at is, as I mentioned previously, just explain your plan. So be completely open with them, tell them exactly what you're looking to do, what you need in order to execute the next stage, the next plan, and be completely transparent so that they can best help you plan this sale and the financial side of it. It's always interesting to ask an accountant what price they think you can achieve for the business. Now, the disclaimer here is that don't take this advice as gospel. Accountants are not the best people in order to value businesses. So whilst they'll be able to look and advise thoroughly on the tax side of things and maybe procedure side of things, these guys, they're not selling businesses. They're not aware of where the current market value sits, and that's a big driver of value. So the reason that we suggest you do this is because it's going to give you an idea of how a buyer's accountant is going to look at the numbers of your business. So I would suggest you ask your accountant where they see the value and what price they think you can achieve. But just put that to the back of your mind. Just use that as a guide as to really how As I said, a buyer's accountant's going to look at those numbers, and then from there we can start working on a plan to try and, if we need to, improve those and improve the way that they're presented to the accountant. The way that we work is typically we'll try and do as much work with the buyer before they talk to their accountant to really get them on board and get them understanding the numbers, so that when, as always happens, when they talk to their accountant and their accountant tells them not to do it, or it's not worth what we're asking for it and that kind of thing, you've already kind of overcome the objection in the buyer's mind, and they can take a more commercial view rather than just taking as complete gospel what their accountant's telling them. So it's a kind of an interesting question to ask, and always good to see what comes back from the accountant. I mean, we've had situations where accountants have told clients that their business is worth nothing, and we've still sold the business for what the client was looking for. So don't worry too much about it. Don't read too much into it, but just use it as a benchmark and a guide figure for when you get further down the track with a buyer, the kind of feedback that they might get from their accountant. So we want to look at the current liabilities of the business, and this is really important for you to understand and double check with your accountant when you do sell the business. And you get the sale proceeds come through from the buyer. How much are you going to have to pay out at the current time, or is there a plan that you need to work to in order to get some? Maybe there's equipment on lease that you need to get paid out. There's things, other loans or other bits and pieces that will sit on the balance sheet that you should be aware of. But maybe this is a good opportunity just to double check that your figures and your calculations are correct and are right. So double check what those liabilities are, and just make sure that there's no nasty surprises. I have had this happen before. Before I moved to Australia in the UK, actually, with one of my businesses, where I'd completely overlooked the fact that my sale was going to trigger a capital gains tax, and I ended up losing about 40% of the sale proceeds, of the profit of the sale, I should say, to a tax that I'd completely overlooked. So not that I think that's a big consideration here. That was an extreme circumstance, but certainly brought tears to my eyes, and actually was one of the driving factors of leaving the UK and moving to Australia. So that kind of getting stuffed for that kind of tax, after basically, the way that I saw that was being penalised for taking an empty shop, making it a successful business, and then selling it for a profit. Look, just double check. Again, this whole workshop, a lot of where I'm coming from with this is situations like that have happened to me in the past. I'm just trying to put together a framework now to help people like yourself avoid those mistakes. So double check with your accountant that there's no liabilities that you've overlooked or forgotten about. So no nasty surprises. Comes back to that whole tax liability. So the capital gain side of things shouldn't be an issue, but just make sure your accountant is going to understand the tax side of your personal affairs and your business better than anybody, and will be best placed to make sure that the sale of your business is not going to trigger any tax liability you're not aware of. So talk about the timing of the sale, and this is going to come back to the liabilities and what's outstanding, just to make sure that, is it better for you to sell the business now, or maybe work on a plan of getting some of those lease equipment or other loan liabilities paid down and paid out before. You can talk about, is there a better time in the quarter to sell it, or the financial year. So talk to your accountant, get some advice about that as well, the timing of the sale, and just put that to the back of your mind again around the overall plan of when you're going to go to market. And you also want to ask them about the split between the apportionment between the goodwill, the assets, and fixtures and fittings. So this is basically what this is. In the contract of sale, during the negotiation stage, there is a split between these two things. So apportionment of the goodwill of the business and the fixtures, fittings. What that means basically is it's what percentage of the sale price is being allocated to each of those things. And from the buyer's perspective, in most cases, the buyer is going to be pushing to get a higher split on fixtures and fittings, because that way it's going to increase their ability to write that down for tax purposes. So in most cases, for yourself, it's going to be better to have the split higher on the goodwill, and for the buyer on assets, fixtures and fittings. But get some feedback from your accountant about your specific tax situation on this. The reason that we suggest you do this early on is because by knowing what that split should be, when you get to the point of drafting the contract with your solicitor, you can actually put this in there early on and stand the best chance of getting the deal that works best for you tax-wise with this split. So again, at this stage, part of the plan, really good idea to get your head around that number and get some feedback from your accountant about that. And then as we get down, as we go to the selling stage and we talk about passing the information on to the solicitor, this is one of those things that can really help you going in on the front foot. So typically with things like this in the contract early on, you might find it doesn't even get questioned or negotiated. So it's, as I said, normally going to be better for you to go higher split on goodwill, and you might sort of go 70%, 30% as an example, and end up negotiating it down 60-40, 50-50 or something else like that. But if you go in on the front foot, you stand the best chance of getting the deal that's going to work best for you. So get some feedback on that. So those are the the key points to be talking about as you move through the planning stage, and hopefully that's given you a better idea of the type of things to expect. So just to recap, ideally you want to be talking, firstly, set up an appointment with your solicitor and cover off those points we talked there about, mainly around the lease and the legal situation. Then make sure that your accounts and your bookkeeping is all up to date, and if you use a bookkeeper, that they're aware of your plans. And then go and sit down with your accountant once you've got your head around those numbers and you know exactly what your plan is and what you're aiming to do. Talk through all of the points we've just covered off on this slide here, and make sure that all of your advisors and your support are on board with the sale process. Okay, so hopefully that's helped, and we will talk in more detail about some of these points as we move through the video series.
Okay, so hopefully that's given you some more insight into the first steps that you need to take when considering the sale of your cafe. Now at this point you're probably asking yourselves things like, well, why are we bothering to do this? You know, why don't I just list the business for sale and see what happens, and can't I just deal with these things as they come up and as we need to? Well, the short answer is that at this stage, with the preparation and the planning, the more work that you put in, the smoother your sale is going to be. So once you've got somebody interested, taking them from that point through till settlement is going to be a lot easier. And I'm pretty sure you're aware at the moment it's a very competitive market. So buyers are pretty spoiled for choice, and if you're doing exactly the same as what other sellers are doing, then you're likely to get the same results. This approach really is all about making the deal easier for you, but also easier for the person buying your business. And the time that you have to invest really at the front end is probably less than you think. Ideally, if you can even put aside 3 or 4 hours to this process, it's going to make a very big difference to the overall sale. So in the next video, we're going to cover the preparation stage, and we're going to make sure you know exactly what to expect from the sale process. We'll look at how to deal with inquiries quickly and efficiently so that you can keep that deal moving. I'm also going to show you the very important process of valuing your cafe. So this is something that most people are very interested to find out what the potential value of their business might be. And I'm going to show you how if you go to the market overpriced, you're not going to generate enough inquiries. And if you're underpriced, you could easily walk away with $10, $20 or $30,000 less than you deserve. But right now, I'd really like to know a little bit more about you. So what have you taken from this video? And what questions do you have about the planning stage? If you scroll down below this video, you'll find there's a comment section, and I'd love to get some feedback and some questions from you about this subject. So feel free to put the comments in there, and keep an eye out for video 2, which is going to be coming out to you via email in the next couple of days.